Hello and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Market Report for today, November 12th, 2025. My name is Tom Luongo. We have a lot to talk about. And we do. And before we get started, I just want to make sure that everybody knows I'm going to be probably not doing as much like public media over the course of the next couple of weeks as we go into Thanksgiving, simply because I've got a compressed schedule in November every year with Newsmax. I've got everything done earlier than I normally would. So with that said, as a matter of fact, I've got to get like everything written by like the 23rd or something. It's insane. And I don't have a head for it today or tomorrow because, like everybody else, I'm fucking crazy over because the sun is burping all over us and driving us all insane. For those of you who are new and don't realize that I have a long relationship, not like not personal relationship, but a long relationship with the work of Ben Davidson over Suspicious Observers. For those of you who also don't know, because you may be new to the scene, I do have a background in high energy physics, metallurgy, quantum mechanics, and bench analytic chemistry. I just so you know, folks, when I listen to this stuff, it all rings true to me. Now I may have quibbles or whatnot about some of Ben's math in terms of the size of the potential effects on all of us, but that's not important. What's ultimately important is that when the gravitic model of the universe doesn't work, dark matter doesn't exist. They can't find it because it doesn't exist. It's like global warming due to CO2. It's a fabrication of a model and the creation from a model that was never accurate or probably even believed in the first place. We can go back and forth on the scientific history on the gravitic model of the universe, but the reality for me is that we've never had an honest or fair discussion about the electromagnetic version of that same model of the universe, and which does a better job of explaining the phenomena that we have, that we experience on a day-to-day basis. So my point being is that, and that may be because of, as always, inertia, and I mean this intellectual inertia and institutional inertia, which of all the institutions out there, science is the worst, by the way. Science is far worse than politics. It's far worse than the judiciary. It's far worse than any other discipline in that respect, intellectual discipline in that respect, because you're talking about people who are very, very smart and who have have an imprinting that lasts their entire life. And it takes a lot of evidence to change the model and change their minds, even though they're supposed to be the ones that should have the most flexible mind when they see data that does not correlate or corroborate past observations, right? But this is the problem in a lot of this stuff. In physics, it's easy because for the most part, the laws of physics are pretty well understood. I'm bracketing that with big freaking air quotes, folks. But compared in this respect, in that physics versus biology, okay, biological systems have so many more degrees of freedom in them that it's all trial and error. It's all voodoo. Western medicine is no more or less accurate than homeopathic medicine, or it is, and simply because it's the number of variables you're trying to control for are just way outside the bounds of human ability to compute and or keep going at any one time. Biology is like geopolitics. You're dealing with a lot of fungible and discordant and easily reinterpreted data, or data that can be interpreted in a number of different ways because of confounding errors and confounding observations. Physics is different that way. It's a lot more straightforward, and it's part of the reason why when I waffle back and forth between my geopolitical hat of wearing that hat and living in Bayesian statistics and probability models, and then the reality of, hey, we can isolate that variable and fucking test for it. One of the problems with understanding, and accepting a fundamental shift in how we look at the universe is that technology is always giving us a better pair of eyes. Again, as I've said many times, or as I've talked about before, I was a bench analytic chemist, and in take one of this thing, I was trying to explain some of this stuff in terms of, our understanding of the universe is only as good as the eyes that we bring to the table. Now, sometimes those eyes are colored with rose-colored glasses, and that's when we start getting into the fungibility of, politics and geopolitics and all that stuff. But when we're talking about science, part of the problem is sometimes you just don't have eyes good enough to measure, the things you need to measure in order to be able to prove the idea that you've got on paper, right? If you can't prove it through observation, then you're never going to convince the institution. You're never going to, convince the institutions to overcome their inertia to adopt a new model. It's just not going to happen. This is where this is the big lead-in for why solar physics, why our models of solar physics and celestial mechanics are so poor. And it's because in our understanding of the electromagnetic contribution to the energetic background of the universe is so bad that we had to just create a fudge factor and call it dark matter. Now, I've been involved in this kind of thing my entire life. When I use the term fudge factor, that's a very specific term for me. That is literally lowercase f sub x or sub variable. We have to add that variable or that function into our equation because we don't fucking know. So we create a fudge function f to deal with the unknown. This is very real. It's absolutely very real in thermodynamics and especially statistical thermodynamics and statistical dynamics. Now, that being said, the picture for today's meme was taken from my neighbor's back porch here in Tennessee. That's the aurora. It was visible last night, I think, all the way down to Florida. It's going to get worse or maybe to Tennessee. It's going to go down to Florida again like it did last year. Last year, I talked to multiple people who had, electrical failures in their homes because the grid backed up and, they had their houses start on fire. Okay. Or more appropriately, they had circuits blow out. Okay. This is going to get more and more real as we go along here because the Earth's magnetic field is weakening and the sun is, doing its natural dynamo thing of the dynamos in the magnetic field, creating sunspots, which create massive ejections of energy from the sun. And if they're aimed at Earth, we don't have a magnetic field to block it. These arguments have been made for many, many, many years. The problem is, like always, we didn't have eyes to see. Now, I'm going to explain what I mean by that simply with a very concrete example. When you test the pH in your pool water, you use a little strip and you dunk it in the water. And if the pH is, and you can read the color gradients are in usually 0.4, maybe even 0.1, depending on the type of water quality testing kit you're using to figure out whether your pH is 7.2 or 7.1 or 7, depends on whether you're using a, methyl orange or a phenolphthalein endpoint. Believe me, I know all this stuff. But if you want to, but that's a very gross approximation. The best thing you can say is, it's about 7, maybe 7.2. Your resolution, about 0.2. Why? Because, you've got two colors that you know the pH of 7.2, for example, and 6.8. And if it's kind of between them, then you can say, yeah, it's probably 7. But that's as close as you can come. Your resolution is 0.2 pH units. You do a proper titration of that number using, a properly calibrated burette and you measure your water to, 6 significant digits and blah, 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 blah. And then you do and you have precisely calibrated, titration solution and you can get very close. And if you're very good with a burette and a stopcock, you can get, 0.05 pH units or 0.1 pH units. If you're me, you can get 0.05. I was very good with a burette and a stopcock. If you need better than that, you need to hold the pH tighter than that, you need to go to an electrode, which can go to 0.01. And you know, with a resolution of 0.005, but really, you know, a practical quantization limit of 0.01 or a method detection limit of 0.01. PQL, by the way, or the practical quantization limit is 4 times the MDL method detection limit. Again, for the analytic geeks in the audience, I know you're all like geeking out right now. You're having a great time. Everybody else, you're like, hey, what the fuck is he talking about? What I'm telling you is this is me putting my bona fides on the table to tell you I understand signal to noise ratio. I understand where when people are talking out their ass when it comes to, you know, the ability to, you know, read data off of a, you know, off of a spectrum or off of a chart. And I know when someone's, you know, trying to make me look at noise and call it data. This is why I've never, ever, ever, ever believed for 1 minute that CO2 caused global warming. Because I looked at the temperature data and I went, that's all noise. That's all noise. There's no signal there. You can't say anything about that data. I wouldn't, if I were the peer reviewer on any of these papers, I would have rejected the papers outright. I'm a prick. Like I have been involved when I worked at UF. I was a part of a very large soils research group, and I worked on a lot of papers. And you can find my name mentioned in a lot of papers. You will not find my name, however, as 4th or 5th author on these papers. And even though that would be the convention, my contributions to those papers were enough for me to warrant a 4th or 5th, you know, a 4th, you know, authorship on the paper. And my graduate students and the postdocs kept publishing these papers and wanting to put my name on it. And I'm like, no, I can't. No, it's okay. It's your work. It's not mine. I'm just helping. No, that was the politic way. If you ever think that I'm not politic, which I generally am not, but I could not say to these people that paper I would not publish. That paper is a piece of shit, and I don't want my name attached to it. Okay, so that's all a long-winded way of me saying, whether you do or you don't believe that, you know, guys like Ben Davidson are full of shit or not, and you should always decide for yourself whether they are or they are not. The reason why the electromagnetic version of the universe took a long time to move the institutional inertia to where it is today over the last 25 years is that we finally put things up in space that could read on the wavelengths where the solar wind, you know, we didn't, the atmosphere is in the way. Above a certain level, above a certain energy level, above or below a certain, you know, wavelength, you know, the atmosphere absorbs all that stuff, and so you can't make a measurement. You have to get outside the atmosphere to be able to accurately measure the solar wind. So until we were putting detection equipment in space outside of the atmosphere that pointed at the sun, we couldn't accurately measure what was coming out of the sun. Now we can. So for decades, the electromagnetic guys were laughed at and ignored, and their papers weren't getting published. And the conversation wasn't happening because they couldn't measure anything to prove their arguments to the people who didn't want to believe the math. You know, because math is racist or whatever. The worst communists are the ones, intellectually speaking, are in academia, even in science. So I say that, all of that, to let everybody know that believe what you want about what's happening right now. But we don't exist in a vacuum. We grow up under this magnetic field. We evolved under this magnetic field, under these conditions, under the constant ebb and flow of that magnetic field, of the Earth's wobble and this and that, and the where we are relative to the plane of the galactic ecliptic, and where the sun accretion disk, the dirt accretion disk is, and all of this stuff. And it matters. And but the TLDR is that when the magnetic field weakens and the sun starts igniting and pointing a whole bunch and pointing its big old friggin' crazy ray at us, we all go crazy. We all die of heart attacks in greater percentages during events like this, because we are electromagnetic beings. Our brain waves are altered. Our body chemistry is altered. All of it. Because how do we function? We're passing electrical signals through our bodies all the time. There's a reason why things like sodium and magnesium and calcium and potassium are called electrolytes. That's just a word. It means something. It's a mechanism of charge transfer. We're all big batteries. Well, really, we're all furnaces. Right? So, I just, at this point, everybody's a little crazy, including me. I'm saving the most crazy for this morning for my rant about Social Security. I could have talked about 1,000 different things this morning. I didn't really intend to talk about this for this long, but it's very important that what we're seeing, the kinds of crash outs that we're seeing across the space, we're seeing it on Twitter, the political space, everybody is literally losing their minds and jumping to conclusions that have nothing to do with reality. I mean, I'm not, I know I'm not wrong about this. And it's only going to get worse through the end of the week. It's going to make Trump say things that he shouldn't say. It's going to make everybody say things they shouldn't say. And I'm not excusing anything that's happening out there, but I can tell you right now, everybody's perceptions are off. And into that perceptual deficit, we are watching an unbelievable amount of slop, AI generated or otherwise, intelligence asset generated slop, filling the airwaves with unbelievable amounts of mal and disinformation, and just horrible commentary from people who think that they're rational when they're not. So a lot of people are going to out themselves as operatives, bots, this, that, and everything else. I can tell you that I'm getting very liberal with the block button on Twitter. I'm not even waiting around anymore. For a lot of people, I'm not waiting around give them 3 strikes. You don't need to be in my feed. You don't need to exist. When you have 15,000 people on your Twitter feed, it's not a big deal. When you have 71,000 people on your Twitter feed and you're trending towards 100,000, now the hangers-ons come in. Now the people who are coming in to build themselves up off of your feed by saying bullshit and slop, those people get auto-blocked. Be very careful how you interact with me, if you're going to interact with me on Twitter. I'm just warning everybody right now. Because if I don't like what I'm seeing, I'm just hitting the ban hammer. We're going right back to old Periscope days with me, with my stylus and my phone, blocking people and then doing the happy dance. For those of you who've been around long enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It has to be that way now. Okay? Because the messaging of what the Trump administration is trying to get through and trying to get across to people in order to improve, in order to implement the agenda that needs to be implemented for us to win this battle, cannot be polluted by a bunch of, bots overwhelming the conversation. And I know how bad it is. And anybody who thinks that I'm crazy for believing that it matters, or that I've got anybody's attention, is the other day when I posted up episode 237 of the podcast with Richard Poe. Within the first 18 hours, the thing had over 100 comments on it, half of which were, oh look, Jews for all intents and purposes. And it was all just slop. It was all just AI bot overwhelming nonsense. And it was crazy. They were out in force. Yeah, just wait till the next time I have Vince on. Holy Christ, dudes. Are they going to lose their minds? All right. So the part about Ukraine is very important because I think it's really obvious at this point that Zelensky is being depreciated on a daily basis at this point. Pavlovska's gone. Another, we're seeing reports of troops like bolting out of Zaporizhia. Like the whole front is beginning to collapse almost to a person. And now we're seeing, reports on about, the damage control about the headline over at Zero Hedge this morning. Western media begins damage control after $100 million corruption scandal rocks Ukraine. Right. Like this stuff is, you think this is going to be like nothing? Like the other day, then there was the thing about Nord Stream 2. Like, and then we're finding out that maybe the EU can't find the money that they froze the Russian foreign exchange reserves that they froze, and now they want to they want to mobilize. Like they can't find the money. Did they already spend it? Like at this point, the EU and the UK and everybody else, they're all just insane, right? The British came out yesterday, and the Canadians, always the British and the Canadians first, we're not going to intelligence share with the United States anymore over their targeting drug speedboats from Venezuela. Do I get to be vindicated again? Do I have to call Chris Marcus and have him drop another $1 in the Tom was right jar? Like, really? You couldn't see that coming? But everybody tried to tell me, oh no, it's not just about the oil, dude. I'm like, all right, whatever. That's nice. I told you it was about organized crime. I told you it was about City of London. So, sorry. Literally today, just scrolling through like Zero Hedge has been actually interesting for the first time in weeks. Trump needs to sue the BBC. Why would he sue the BBC? Well, obviously, because you need to bankrupt them. You need to bankrupt them. You can make them, print $4 billion and stick it in Trump's coffers, and then he can then donate it back to the Treasury, and we can go, like, give me a break. There's all sorts of shit happening here, and it's crazy, and it's all good, but every bit of the good that's being presented is being presented as bad. And the people who are presenting it to you as bad are either 1, compromised, 2, crazy from the solar flare, or 3, have always just been fucking grifters. And that their whole purpose of their existence is to be a negative. And that's it. That's it. You can't be, sometimes you can be a critic of the dominant paradigm, but then when the dominant paradigm shifts your way, then you can't be a critic. You can't just be a constant critic. You have to play the game. It's why I like guys like Peter St. Onge. He's critical on some days, and he's happy, smiling, joking it up about how, we're going to finally fix immigration and the border wall. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Peter's a rational person and a nice guy. I'm not a nice guy. I try to be rational. There are days when I'm irrational. I'm okay with that. But I understand what the Trump administration is trying to do. The fact that we have so many people within the MAGA movement trying to be as ungenerous to Donald Trump on every front, every time he opens his mouth or every time he does anything, tells me they're not actually team players, or they're actually not even capable of understanding what the strategy is. Now, you could make the argument, and you would be right to make this argument, that the problem is Trump's messaging is terrible. Okay. But is it really that terrible? Or are you just dumb? And I'm not talking about the average person out there. I'm talking about the commentators who are supposed to be interpreting this stuff and moving the ball forward. I warned you all that people would be crashing out all year long. I told you this was going to happen. I hate to say that I told you so. I hate to do it. I didn't want these people to go. I implored them not to go that route. I implored them to come on my friggin' podcast or have me on their show so we could sit and chat it out so they don't crash out. I don't have to be a voice in the wilderness to be the only one like standing up going, oh, by the way, you're wrong. But no. Gatekeeper, because they can't be wrong in public. And they're everywhere, folks. They're everywhere. Why haven't you had a conversation with this guy? It's a good question. Why don't you ask that guy? Because it ain't about me. Never has been. Well, the only guy I'm not going to go out, I'm going to go out of my way to avoid is Peter Schiff. Because you saw what it looks like when if you watch this show I did with Jim Jatras and Jason Mirachuk the other day, you'll understand. You'll see what it looks like when I encounter someone that I actually like acting like a fucking child. And Jim was acting like a child. And I hate to say that. I really do. But, he was. If you're 70 years old and you've decided to get out of the game for 10 years and then you come back into it, don't be surprised if your opinions don't mean anything. Because you have lost the plot. I've seen a lot of guys do this, by the way. I've seen a lot of guys who got out of the game 6, 7, 8 years ago, starting to come back. And they're coming back and they can't run the same grift that they did or the same shtick that they ran 8 years ago because the game board has changed. So. Ukraine is on the verge of, I think is actually now, finally, I'm really beginning to see Ukraine is on the verge of collapse. And the British are now being isolated to go down with the Ukrainians. And and the rest of Europe doesn't know what to do other than, go to war. We'll see if it's true. I mean, we have a fundamental we have a bunch of problems here in the United States that we have to deal with. And that are long-term and structural, and they're not going to get fixed overnight. We're dealing with, this is 1981, 82. There's a long way to go to get through this on the other side. We've been in a depression for 15 years. It's been an inflationary depression, but it's been a depression nonetheless. But, the stones to get through it. Fine. We have a roadmap here at GGnG to get through it. For those of you who are not newsletter subscribers, I don't always talk about the roadmap on purpose here in the market reports. And there's a reason for that. I don't, mean to be mean or rude or anything, but it's our business, right? When I go off on seeming tangents like this one, I'm not doing so because, it satisfies my ego. It's part of the landscape of commentary. It's part of the landscape of the factors that are, affecting the outcomes. I mean, the rest of the solar cycle could have more of an effect on the outcome of the midterms than anything that comes out of Trump's mouth. And by the way, Davos doesn't control that weather. That's a reference to a year and a half ago when everybody was screaming that Davos could do weather control because of the massive hurricanes. And then we had to be, we had to be inundated and become newly minted experts about HARP and all that bullshit, cloud seeding and all of this. And I'm like, oh my freaking God. So they turned that knob this morning to 11? Holy shit. Really? Those of you who were there, you remember, go back and read the comments on those market reports. It was a good time for very small values of good. Bottom line, a lot of shit's going on. We're going to go through the market stuff here now. But in some ways, it's almost best to just shut everything off for 2 days. The anxiety you feel is a mix of the anxiety pimping, the solar storm, the fact that the anxiety pimping is at, KP9, like, it's crazy. RAMPs go to 11. Like, what else am I going to tell you? And you should read it that way. And you should stay away from polling. Polling data is dumb. None of this is going to matter in 9 months. The Democrats have lost the shutdown. The coup against Schumer is nearly complete. They're going to double down on crazy. At the same time, they're also going to shift towards left-wing populism. Mamdani is their poster child for left-wing populism along with AOC. The old guard is being put out to pasture. That's what they're going to gear up for. All of a sudden, they're going to be left-wing populists. You wait, what's coming? Because they understand that type of populism wins, and they're going to try and win the midterms with it. And if they win the midterms, folks, it's over. Stick a fork in us. We're done. The country's going to split. They'll impeach Trump. They'll do whatever they're going to do. So, as opposed to complaining that Trump's not doing enough, or he didn't put enough people in jail, or this or that, or anything else, even though headlines are full every day of 30, 40, 50 human traffickers, drug traffickers. All these people are going to fucking jail. Border crossings are down. H-1B visa, immigration visa numbers have turned negative. But we don't see any of those numbers. What we see is when something good happens, 15 or 20 people bomb a fucking thread going, how many arrests were there yesterday? None. And at that point, you know that you're dealing with a bot. That's it. Let's talk about gold. Here's a bright spot for you. So on Sunday, I think I said, hey, that's a really good sign. That little inside bar right there. We're nowhere near normal volatility in gold. I mean, this isn't even normal volatility, though it looks small compared to all these recent bars, right? And then we see what we're dealing with this morning with gold. It's now threatening again, 4,200 an ounce. What else can I tell you? I would argue that it's China's turn. I didn't speak to Vince about this morning. I chatted with Vince just before I hit record again about something else, and he and I have got the subject for our next podcast. I'm going to hold that. I'm going to hold off on talking about that for a little while because Vince deserves the credit, and it's not something that's actionable right now anyway. It's a big long-term observation about gold, but suffice it to say, gold's not going down here. Gold looks great. It looks like it looks absolutely like it's coming right back into the monetary system, full steam ahead. And that's how we're going to balance the books. That's how we're going to um, collateralize the debt, and that's how we're going to revalue all the assets. This isn't a trade. This is a repricing of the world. Unit of account is changing. It's becoming gold. Silver. Quietly, silver is back over $51 an ounce. Somebody posted this morning. Well, that was as of like 9 o'clock. It's now well back over $52 an ounce. Silver's gone ballistic, and with good reason. So, unless this is a mistype on my part, hold on for a second. Did silver actually hit 52.98, or did it only hit 51.98? I typed the wrong number. Nope, sorry. Silver right now is trading at 53.63 on the cash market. Yeah, it's not even very much in backwardation. That should scare you. Okay, we're headed much, much higher on both of these assets. So enjoy the ride, and I hope you both first took profit and then bought the dip. I know I did. I don't usually tell you what I do personally, but every once in a while, but you know that I do tend to sniff out bottoms, and I usually sniff out bottoms by buying. So, and I don't buy a lot, but when I do buy, it's usually pretty close to the bottom. Silver looks good. Obviously, if we hold these numbers through the end of the week, we're looking at the all-time high weekly closing price, and we're on our way to $80 an ounce. And gold is clearly on its way to 6,000. If it breaks off of this, it's going to at least 5, possibly 6. If there's a collapse of the LBMA, folks, like, we don't know where the number goes. Okay? And again, this gets into, is gold becoming the new collateral of the world? What do you think? Bitcoin's not moving alongside it, as a lot of whales are selling, and maybe they're selling because they've realized that the next big move is in gold, not Bitcoin. That's one theory. Another theory is that Bitcoin is being forced to be sold by those who need to sell it because they were overexposed in it, because other parts of their balance sheet are starting to implode. I've been saying for a while that there has to be a wealth transfer from the financialist class back to the productive class. People like Larry Fink were created to ensure that that didn't happen. But BlackRock had to write down a big asset in New York earlier in the week. A couple $100 million. Gone. Saw a thing yesterday that the head of BlackRock's real estate division, Kathleen, whatever her name is stepping down at the end of December. Huh. You don't say. BlackRock is overexposed to property, rental property in New York City? Really? And who ran as a loss leader the most aggressive Bitcoin ETF last year? BlackRock. BlackRock was selling Bitcoin ETF shares. I think what their ticker symbol is like IBIT, I think. With fund fees that were like, I don't know, 0.15% or something. It was one of the lowest priced ETFs to own in the world. That's because they wanted the market share, because they wanted to control the Bitcoins and then be able to run the triangle trade. And spoof the price of Bitcoin and then control it. As I said the other day, if the story is correct about Trump getting CZ Binance out of jail, CZ, as in like the gun, CZ. This is his handle. It's his name. Whatever the guy's name is, I don't know what it is, but he's known as CZ Binance. He's the guy who owns Binance, which is one of the big crypto exchanges out there. If the story is true that they got him out of jail in order to put Binance back in the game, in order to, as an antipode, they broke him out of prison and then, threw him on the front lines to do, shock troop operations in the financial markets to undergird the price of Bitcoin. Then right now the volatility is going to work to his advantage. At some point, we'll see if Bitcoin is going to, rally out of here or not. I don't know. It's an interesting story. I hope it's true. But clearly at this point, gold is the story. And that makes me happy ultimately, not because I don't like Bitcoin. Also note that like all the privacy coins have been going crazy. Monero, Pirate Chain, even I think Epic Cash I haven't looked at the price on Epic Cash, but Zcash, they're all been going nuts. Even Decred. Why? Well, because if the walls are closing in on certain aspects of our global organized crime syndicate we call government, then it makes sense that the privacy coins are not going to be able to handle the inflows while people try to move billions of fucking dollars around without anybody seeing them or being able to trace them. Rats leaving the sinking ship, cockroaches scurrying into the dark. Across the entire privacy space, not just one or two of them, all of them. It's a temporary thing, and we've seen this before. It's not a rotation trade out of Bitcoin into the privacy coins because, and to pump the Bitcoin to the next stage of the bull market. That would have happened back at 80,000 back in April, back here. That didn't happen. Maybe it happened here or there. But what's happening in the last few weeks just looks to me like somebody trying to money launder, get their money out of someplace. I would argue Europe, before the whole thing collapses. Or Ukraine. Or Venezuela. Or anywhere else that the Trump administration is threatening these ridiculous regimes. Brent crude, kind of moribund this week, though. It attempt to break out of this 2-week downtrend, and then it got shit hammered, and it's getting shit hammered again this morning. So we'll see what happens into the end of the week. But again, the amount of energy that it'll take now to push Brent crude back down to 60 will ensure that it won't break 60. And if it does, it will be very brief. And it'll be a false move. You could argue these were all false move ups, right? Right? False move up, down, right? Reversal, immediately reversed. Immediately reversed, and then reversed again. I mean, this is look at this downtrend, weak 3-bar reversal, or you could even argue if this was 20 cents in the opposite direction, this is a 2-bar reversal, which is then reversed, spike bottom, which is reversed, and then that's reversed, and then that's not reversed, and then the 12-day war, like all sorts of reversals in here. Chart's crazy. Okay, so midweek update on the markets. I don't see anything other than gold and silver, which are the story. Not a big deal. All right. This is how deep Rand Paul's betrayal of his generation, of his base, of America is. I will explain this chart carefully. I'm going to start with my personal Social Security statement that I just got the latest version of in the mail the other day. And I had already been looking at my Social Security statements recently for a variety of reasons. And this is what I want to point out to you. My current statement, and all the way through until I decide to stop working and start collecting Social Security, at these 3 ages, these are what my payouts will be at my current drawn salary rate on an annualized basis. I took my Social Security earnings statement, just so you know, all the way back to 1983 when I was 16 years old, made the princely sum of $876, and said, okay, let's apply the Social Security tax rate to that, adding my contribution plus my employer's contributions over the years together. The number came up roughly correct. And I said, okay, let's invest that money every year in 4 different models. The median return on a 10-year note for each year, the S&P total return for each year, and a 60-40 bond, and a 60-40 fund, weighted 60% towards the 10-year bond and 40% towards the S&P 500, and then it's 40-60 or aggressive fund. So this is your, typical 60-40, medium risk fund. This is your more aggressive 40-60 fund where you bias towards stocks as opposed to bonds. And this is also to note how many years of the zero bound were we? So now, what we wind up with is that at age 62, the balance on these accounts, where I start drawing this amount of money out of my personal account, if I had just taken that money that the government took from me and put it into these 4 models, what I would have wound up with, what that money would have represented. Right? And if I started drawing at age 62, $1,811 a month, by age 75, this is the amount of money I would have left over in those accounts, having pulled that money out. At age 65, I'm due $2,235 a month. If I hold, and this is with a model going forward to 2042, mind you, which includes a Dave Collum-esque 20% negative return one year on the S&P 500, which would be the second worst total return on the S&P in history. The worst being COVID at minus 37%, or at least since 1962. Let's just make life easy because that's where I've got the data back to. And rates concomitantly going down along with that, so that stocks get killed, bonds go up, the Fed goes back to 1%. Like there's a couple of years in the little model that I put together where the Fed goes drastically down to 1% right after I retire. I have a negative 20% in the model in 2028, folks. Thinks that seems reasonable to me. A couple more years of capital inflow to the United States, and then the whole thing just starts to collapse. If everybody, if all the lawbirds are correct about everything, fine. I did this. And then just take the money after I start drawing and put it in the 10-year T-bill, the 10-year Treasury note, pulling all the money out and just having it in 10-year T-bills or 10-year Treasury note, not keeping it in this return model. Just the minute I start drawing, I'm just getting I just took the whole shebang, all $350,000 or $2 million and put it into 10-year Treasury notes, paying me prevailing rate, and I modeled nothing more than 3.5% with a couple of years above 4, and most of it at 3. these are the numbers that I've got. Anybody's interested in the model, I will publish the spreadsheet, and you can look at the numbers. This is money that's been stolen from me. And Rand Paul wants to raise the fucking retirement age to 70? Fuck you. Motherfucker, you owe me $227,804. Minimum. You actually owe me $385,000 if you want me to hold off getting my Social Security till age 70. Because that's what I would have after pulling $3,200 a month for 5 years to age 75. By the way, the numbers get worse. These distributions aren't high enough to even impact the goddamn balances. The only model that actually where I wind up with less money than when I started drawing off of my Social Security payout is the age 62 model, where in the 10-year note. That's the only model. Starts at about a balance of about $350,000, and after drawing on it for 13 years at $1,800 a month, I still have $228,000 in the bank in case I live to 80. Okay? All of these other models are still accretive. The balances are going up. I'm not pulling enough money out. It's a scam. It's a pay-as-you-go death tax. For most of our lives, it was a pay-as-you-go death tax where black men died early to make sure that white women got their husband's Social Security check as they lived to 85 and 90. Rand Paul's argument about how we need to raise the interest rate, the retirement age to 70, is yet another betrayal of Gen X. Fuck you, boomers. This is a classic Gen X fuckery play. Because we're the smallest voting bloc. What they're saying is, oh, by the way, now that you're all in your prime earning years, we're going to make you work until you're 70 in order to get your full Social Security payout, where you still lost millions of fucking dollars had that money not been stolen from you. And we're doing so to buy off the boomers' votes and shore up the system so that the millennials have Social Security in the future, which they shouldn't have. So the millennials will vote for it, the boomers will vote for it, and the Gen Xers get fucked again. This is literally what Rand Paul just put on the table, and he's the libertarian. He's supposed to be the Gen X champion. He's the libertarian senator from Kentucky, first member of Gen X to hold real political power. And this is what he just puts on the table? Tell me he doesn't work for the City of London. Let's steal even more money from the generation that they're going to that they just want to collapse everything and take it all away from us for, and then hand the country off to a bunch of Muslims and poos. These numbers should outrage you. And they're my numbers, and honestly, folks, my numbers suck. Because for most of my life, I didn't make any fucking money. I'm not sitting on $10 million worth of stock options it's sitting on shit. You know what I'm sitting on? I'm sitting on a big fat fucking Social Security bill that stole my goddamn future. Because all these fucking people had to do was take 16-year-old me and say, we're taking 12% of your income and we're putting it in 10-year treasury bonds. And it'll be there for you at the end. Here's your payout. And we don't know what your payout's going to be. We'll let you know when you're about 45. Okay. These numbers are insults. You want to fix Social Security? You pay me this $1,800 a month at age 62 and don't penalize me for working. Because remember, this model, I get to pull that money out and still continue to work if I want to work and not be penalized for it. It's an $1,800 a month addition to my income. Oh no. If I work, well, no, I get that taken away from me. I don't get anything. It's a pay-as-you-go death tax. Why would libertarian Rand Paul say, I want Social Security to be there for you in the future? Why? Your dad was like, we need to get rid of Social Security in 2008. What they should have done in 2012, had they not stolen the nomination from Rand Paul and given it to Mitt Romney to lose to fucking Barack Obama, was to do effectively what Ron was saying, was to let the younger people opt out of the system and keep our promises to our old people and just wind the system down. What would have happened then, for example, in 2012, I would have been 45 years old, entering my prime earning years. If I had to pay into Social Security at a depreciated rate of like, I don't know, take 2% off every year less on my FICA. So 12% one year, the next year 10, then 8, then 6, then 4, whatever. Drop it down from 12 to 0 over a 5-year period. So that there's a little bit of money constantly moving into the system while we transition from one system to the other. But you're done. You're not going to get any Social Security when you're finished, but you can take that money and you can invest it now. Which is when we all put, from 45 to 65 is when we put most of our money into Social Security anyway, because that's when we make the most money. So had they let us out of the system, then we would have at least been able to, we probably could have easily matched Social Security. Certainly in 2012, had we just bought the friggin' S&P 500 and done the S&P total return model as opposed to the 10-year note model. And even if we had done this model, because we had to, because we were so behind the curve, we'd still wind up with numbers that were very close to this, where we could hit our Social Security numbers by these ages and still have residuals at 75 grand that we could pass on to our children if we die at that point. No, this whole thing was designed to kill us all off. The stress, the management, all of it. It's all designed to rob you of your life, to rob you of your reason, to rob you of your strength and your vitality and your time. That's all stolen time. This is all lost opportunity cost. Every fucking bit of this. And it's an outrage, and it needs to end. It needs to go the way of the fucking dodo. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. No discussion. I don't care. Trump wants to give me a $2,000 tariff check. Thank you. How about one of those a quarter for the rest of my life in order to get back the lost money here? Because that money should have been invested, and I should be getting a $6,000 payout every month if I held off to age 70 to draw that thing down to 75. And then say, look, after 75, you got nothing left. You can take it all in a lump sum over 5 years, or you can hold on to it until you're 80. You can do it however you want. It's a dumb system. Understand that the way it is designed that you get back the money you put into it 5 years after, like, when you reach age 70. The money you put in is the money you're going to get out. It takes 5 years at $22.35 a month to get the money out that I put into it. Forget what my employer put into it. That money's gone. Just to get the $135 grand I put into Social Security, it will take me that long. Exactly. That's how it's calculated. It's ridiculous. Oh, by the way, that's accurate to four significant figures. 5.00024 years. Did the math. It's designed that way. Same here. You're going to get $18.11 a month because you're going to pay in. You're going to get back out what you paid in by age 70. That's it. Zero return on investment. Zero. By age 70. Zero. You paid in your entire life. All the opportunity cost. All the money lost. It's all gone. They spent it. It doesn't exist. To dole it back out to you for 5 years and then hope you die after that. No return on investment whatsoever. Not even freaking T-bill rates. Rand Paul wants to raise Social Security to 70. Oh, by the way, he now has a fucking revolution on his hands. And every Gen Xer should pick up a freaking rifle and show up at fucking Heathrow Airport and mow down every fucking British elite they can find. Because they did this to us. They stole our money. And then when we're done with them, we cross the friggin' channel. We walk across the tunnel, and we go over to the fucking Netherlands, and we shoot those sons of bitches too. You're not angry enough. This is wrong. This is why we need to cut $3 trillion from the damn budget. This is why weak-willed beta cucks like fucking Rand Paul need to be bounced from the goddamn Senate yesterday. He should be impeached for even suggesting that they fuck us this hard. Look these numbers over again. Burn them into your brain. That's what they stole from you. If they stole it from me, they stole probably more of it from most of y'all, because you paid a hell of a lot more money into the goddamn system than I did. And they ensured that we couldn't generate wealth until we were 55 years old. And then, and it was at that exact moment that Obama had changed the friggin' scale, knowing goddamn well that Gen X was gonna start hitting their stride in their 50s to pay for the boomers. Over the course of 5 years, the max, the income max for paying into Social Security rose from $124,000 to $175,000 a year. Okay? You understand yet? Do you get it? Fuck these people. He's not a libertarian. He's not on your side. He hates you. Every one of you. So does Thomas Massey. We already know the Uniparty fucking hates us. And so does Robert fucking Barnes. And all the rest of them. Every goddamn one of them. There's one thing that needs to absolutely end. It's this scam. Right here, right now. So yes, the only way these kids are going to be able to build any equity whatsoever is a $200,000 starter home, basically handed to them from the government at 3% for 50 years, and private equity and Rand Paul and all the other motherfuckers who are the donor classes up there, they're all going to pay for this. The only good thing I've heard out of any of these fucking people's mouths in the last 2 weeks is that we have to get rid of Susie Wiles. Because she's the one running the goddamn donor class through the friggin' White House. That $3 trillion that the Bank of England or whatever the hell, however much it is, if I total it all up, it's retarded. Some ridiculous number. Running the same scam that they ran all during Janet Yellen's administration. At least this time, though, they're not getting any help from Scott Bessent. Selling 30s, buying 1s and 2s. I don't know how long they can keep that grift going, but they will. Natural gas is breaking out. And it's not just, this is not a daily chart. This is not a weekly chart. This is a monthly chart. Watch natural gas futures very carefully. We have some natural gas plays in the portfolio. It's interesting. The German-Italian spread is dropping like a rock. It's moved 4 basis points in the last 3 days. Everything else is being held in amber. Japanese 10 years pushing up towards 170. Copper's trying to break above $5 a pound. And the London price of copper is a very interesting chart. So much different than the American chart of copper. The American chart of copper is the one that's really being sat on. The London price of copper is now blowing past $10,000 a ton, or 10,000 pounds a ton. It's sincere. So they're losing control over in London. And then gasoline is basically flat. Not a lot going on here today. But brewing underneath the surface, yes. Probably in these spreads, the long end of the curve versus the short end. Dow Jones. Dow Jones is like, again, how many times do I have to say this? Every drawdown, the Dow Jones is leading to a new reversal signal. Except this time it's happening, first it was, let's look at the last 3. Hell, let's look at the last 4. So move up, reversal signal, attempted to move higher, took 5 weeks to consolidate, failed reversal here, consolidate for 5 weeks, then the next leg higher, capped it for 4 weeks, reversal signal, reversal to new week, reversal to new high, 3-bar reversal to new high, 2 week sideways, 5 week uptrend, 1-bar reversal, 2-bar reversal to a new high, 1-bar reversal, 1-bar reversal. It's accelerating every time the Dow corrects. The corrections are having less and less and less effect. This is monetary heroin. So the usual suspects are coming in and bombing our market. And every time they're doing so, they're bombing the market into a stiffer wind, which is then reversing the trade. False move down, false move down, false move down. They didn't look like false move downs back here because they were a 3-bar reversal, a reversal and a no reversal consolidation period for 5 weeks, a really ugly bottom, right, and crash. And then as the market kept getting its feet, it's showing more and more and more conviction that the Dow is the place to be as we come into the end of the year. That's what I've got for you this morning. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's a solar flare. Or maybe, just maybe, this is my way of keeping my stick on the ice. Take care.